Hello, family, and welcome to Dinel's channel, geared to inspire you in your walk with the Lord. Now, let's get to today's video. Hello, family, and thank you so much for clicking and watching today's video. We are going to defeat procrastination together. I had to get that right. Procrastination, right? Now, let's quickly get into the definition of this because it's really something that many people struggle with. And this is why we don't, maximize our potential. We don't maximize what God has put before us because we keep on saying, no, I'll do it. I'll do it. Just not now. I'll do it. I'll do it, And sometimes the reason is because we are busy scrolling on the internet the whole time and we don't even realize that time is passing, while we are having fun, while we are being updated of what other people are doing, how far are their lives and all those things. We are delaying our own selves, and we are also wasting the time that God has given, you know to us, where we could be using it for something productive that could even make our lives better, right? Now, the definition from Google is saying procrastination is the act of unnecessarily rather delaying or postponing, right, a task despite knowing there will be negative consequences. So this is very dangerous. So if you are here and you're struggling with this, please stick around throughout the whole video until the very end, because tonight, or rather today, we are getting a solution to this, to say, how do we really defeat this thing? How do we really begin to move in intentionality and move, shift all these distractions away from us, so that we could maximize our time potential, and really get the most out of the time that God has already given us, instead of wasting it away scrolling throughout the whole night, the whole day, and even losing even the our the right play, the right focus rather, that we are supposed to be having pertaining our destinies and our purposes, right? Because if we are not careful, when we procrastinate, because of maybe pleasure, leisure, or because of we are entertaining our flesh, because sometimes I've also noticed that, especially with our phones, the flesh can be calling for more, where you want to, it starts with just a small video, and then sooner or later you begin to now realize that you're actually way now too deep. You're no longer in that one video that you were initially looking for, but you are now somewhere where you're checking out other things that are already distracting you, and that's how you are losing your time. That's how you're not maximizing your time. That's how you sometimes, that's rather sometimes the reason why you feel depressed. You feel like you are tired. It's not because really you are tired. Sometimes it's because you are tired because of scrolling. You're tired because you're wasting, or you are not channeling your focus. You are looking at things that are not even adding, towards your destiny, towards your purpose. And that is why you now begin to feel like worn out, sort of depressed and depleted, because these things do take our energy. Now, I'm going to quickly get into the word, and then I'll also share my practical ways on how I'm fighting this, because this is a reality. Procrastination, it's not, something that, how do I put it? I would say it's only people that get distracted, that procrastinate. But even, we find us, I myself have found myself in, certain times that, no, I would say I'm going to do this, and then I'm not doing it. I said, no, I'll do it. And then a week passes and I'm like, oh my goodness, I had said I'm going to do this. And when I look back at what really was the reason that I didn't continue with what I had planned, the reasons would not always be very, understandable, because it would be things that would maybe sometimes just come up, without me having realizing, that these things will come up, and already I would give them attention. And then as I give them attention, then I get divided, and I'm no longer on what I had initially said I'm going to do. So don't take this for granted. I know we humans, sometimes we go a bit off. However, we should not make a lifestyle of this habit of procrastination. If you find yourself that you have been procrastinating a lot, you've been lazy, you've been just delaying a lot of things that you must do, this is the time to say, I'm getting up again and defeating this, because it's not very right for us to be like that. In actual fact, let's find out what the Bible speaks about this subject, procrastination. Now, in the book of Proverbs, I'm going to read a couple of verses. Let's begin with Proverbs chapter 14, verse 23. Yes. Proverbs, I'm going to put it up. Proverbs chapter 14, verse 23. It says, work brings profit, but mere talk leads to poverty, right? So when we just, this is very much powerful. It says, when work brings profit, that productivity, when we are busy, when we are working, when we are not lazy, that brings profit. And that is so true. We know, right? We've seen it and we know. And it says, but when we just talk, mere talk leads to poverty. And normally, when we procrastinate, this is what we do. We just talk about things we want to do, talk about things we think we must do, or we know we must do, but we never do them. So the Bible says, when we continue in that thing rather leads to poverty. So if we are not careful, we will end up being poor, not because God doesn't love us, but because we are failing to manage our time wisely. We are failing to manage our resources wisely. We're just talking, but with no action. This is so deep and very serious. Now, also in the same line of Proverbs, let's also quickly check Proverbs 20, verse 4. Proverbs chapter 20, verse 4, it reads, those who are lazy to plow in the right season will have no food at the harvest. So it says those who are lazy, or rather, actually, it says those too lazy. I'm reading from the NLT version. It says those too lazy to plow in the right season will have no food at the harvest. And we know that procrastination is closely very much related with laziness, right? Sometimes we would just say, we will do it, but it's because we're just lazy to do it. Think of, how sometimes you keep on saying, I will do this laundry, or I will, whatever is that you say you will do, and you never do it. I will clean that place, but you just get used to it, and you just now even normalize it to say, ah, nah, man, it's fine. Even if I leave it, nobody's going to do anything to me. But you're not understanding that you're creating a pattern already. You're teaching your mind already, of this pattern that it will be very difficult for you to come out from. Because once you are used to a certain pattern, even your life takes the shape of that which you have, already normalized, right? So it's very, very important for us to pull up our socks, make sure that we are fruitful, make sure that you're productive, make sure that when you, like, for example, when it's like a Friday like this, sit down, reflect again. This week, what have I done? What did I do? What was really this whole week, full of? What was my whole focus in this week? Well, was I just, waking up and taking it as the day it comes, without even direction, because trust me, if we do not have some sort of focus, our focus will be everything. If you don't define your focus can be anything. You can just wake up in the morning and begin to scroll, like I said, or do any other thing, which is not in any way going to add to your destiny. It's just delaying you, but you are really being consumed in that. It's taking your time, taking your energy, taking your effort, taking every part of you. And when you finish, you're like, wow, 5 days gone or 4 days gone. What did I really do with these? And remember, like I said, this is very important because it's playing a big role in the future you are, believing or trusting God for. Maybe you are seeing yourself as, somebody that wants to grow bigger, in your walk with God or in your relationship with God. You want to do stuff for the kingdom of God, or in your workplaces, or wherever you are situated, wherever God has planted you or placed you. You want to do better, but you will not see that come to fruition if you do not take steps, practical steps of, I'm focusing, taking away all the distractions, making sure that you cut some things off. If you have to take time off, social media, if it's distracting you, if it's taking your time, if it's depleting you, if you can't stop yourself, then cut it. and you will thank yourself later when you see that your life is taking is taking shape of what you've always dreamt of. You know that you're moving in the right direction and you're not wasting time, right? So it's very important for us really to, take heed, like the word has said. When we talk a lot, and we don't do anything, we're leading ourselves to poverty. So let's begin to be action men and women, that will be productive and that will be fruitful as well in our pursuit of the Lord. Now, practical tools rather that I'm using is, I would advise that get a notebook, or a journal, something where you can jot down, the plans. Here it's written ideas, plans, and dreams. This is something that is just giving me inspiration. You can have something like this as well, where I jot down all these plans. Being honest with you, it's not always very, how do I put it, very exciting. Some days we are weak, we are tired, because life happens, but we don't stay in that whole habit of destruction, confusion, depression. We get up, if something happens in your life and you're demotivated, you're no longer dreaming again, you're no longer planning, you're no longer present, in your walk with God on a daily basis. This is a time, to ask him for refreshment, so that you can keep in step with him, so that you are not letting time pass by, without you maximizing what God has given you. So one of the things you can have, like I said, a journal, have a book where you jot down the plans, where you jot down the things that you have to do. This will keep your mind also focused and bring you back as well into this line of, okay, let me bring myself back to what I'm supposed to focus on, right? So this helps a lot, and you are not scattered, because this is where you gather your thoughts, and this is what helps you to also be a bit focused now, right? And another thing, I like to have, some small, papers for notes where I write my things. For example, on a daily basis, this I use on a daily basis. Like when I wake up in the morning, normally I would have my time with God. And after that, depending on the day, because some days maybe I wake up early, maybe I have to go somewhere or whatever. But my normal routine is, when I get up in the morning, obviously I just relax a bit, maybe brush my teeth, relax myself, refresh myself. And then when I get ready on my time, with God, I have my quiet time with the Lord, and then I normally have these after my quiet time. So this is like just a bit of a sticky kind of note paper where I write, sort of a mini program for myself for the day, so that I'm not like just scattered and just all over the place. It can sound so old, but this is so working. This is working. It helps one to be productive, instead of being scattered and all over the place. So consider finding yourself one of these also. They normally come in packs. Buy them, write them on a daily. What is it that you have to get done on that day? And you will see your life will never be the same again. So these are my practical tools. And of course, on top of these practical tools that I use for myself, like writing down and all of that, you ask God for wisdom. Ask the Lord for wisdom. How do I, God, go on this day? How do I handle this day, oh God? The Lord will give you wisdom. And I tell you what, that is how you defeat procrastination. Go back and live with intentionality. Thank you guys for watching for today, and see you on the next video.